There are people out there who have previously voted Liberal, who I think will not see their values reflected in the current Liberal Party and leadership.
I'm reaching out today to NDP voters, and I'm asking them, if you want to change our healthcare system, please vote for Ontario's Liberals. And together, we can change the government.
Ontario Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie doubling down on her debate pitch to NDP voters there, arguing she and her party are best positioned as progressives to stop PC leader Doug Ford. What does the NDP think of that pitch? Marit Stiles is the party's leader. Hi, Ms. Stiles. Welcome to the program. Thanks very much for making the time.
Hey, it's great to be here.
I wanted to start off on the pitch Bonnie Crombie made at the end of the debate and then doubled down on again today. Essentially, asking progressive voters that if they want to stop Doug Ford, her party is in a better position than yours to actually accomplish that. Does she have a point?
Well, I think that tells you everything you need to know about the Liberals, right, in Ontario right now. Look, I am fighting to form government, right? About a couple weeks ago, when Doug Ford called this election, he resigned as Premier. And I'm running to be the next Premier of Ontario and to deliver a government that's going to be on the side of Ontarians, of the people of this province, after 7 very difficult years under Doug Ford. We hold ridings currently in every corner of this province. We have boots on the ground, and we are working really hard to flip seats from blue to orange. That is 100% my focus because I'm in it to fight and form government.
I guess, though, the challenge to that, with great respect, Ms. Stiles, is that I can't find a single poll in which you are positioned better than the Liberals to actually accomplish that and to unseat Doug Ford as Premier, including the Nanos research one done for CTV, where the Liberals are sitting at 27%, in your party at 17.9%. So again, if the message is to progressives, like, you want to stop Doug Ford and unseat him, does Bonnie Crombie not have a better chance of doing that?
You know, we've seen in the last few elections that that doesn't really translate on election day here in Ontario. And like I said, you know, for me, the focus is on flipping those blue seats to orange. And what I'm finding as I'm on the road right now is that our message is really connecting with a lot of people. There's a lot of momentum out there. And my message to people is a hopeful one. You don't need to settle for this, and you certainly don't need to settle for another party that has not really delivered for Ontarians in the past or has set us up for a lot of the crisis that we're seeing here, particularly things like the healthcare crisis in Ontario, which, you know, was really came to be. It was invented by the Liberals previously, and the Conservatives have just poured gasoline all over this. Ontario's in bad shape right now, but there's an opportunity to make change here. And that opportunity means we have to vote for something different. And so I think we offer the best opportunity for that, but also I think the most hope for people out there.
And I certainly understand, and you made a lot of these points in the debate, issues that Ontarians face around healthcare, around affordability. There are significant ethics questions where this government is concerned as well. I guess I wonder, though, why have you failed to convince Ontarians thus far that your party is that alternative? Like, why aren't you punching through to a greater degree if, in fact, all of that is true?
Well, you know, Vassie, I do think that, you know, Doug Ford called this election a snap election in the middle of the winter, kind of hoping that people in Ontario wouldn't notice. I think he thought he could pull one over on them. And I hear that increasingly from people, because what's happening is people are just now in the final days of the election, the final week, starting to, I think, wake up to the fact that an election is here, buried in the snowbanks. There are signs out there. And I think people realize now, you know, they're starting to turn their attention toward the election, and they're realizing that Doug Ford's government and what he's offered has made life harder for everyone here. And you see it in the shortage of family doctors, right? 2.5 million Ontarians without a family doctor. The difficulty in finding a home you can afford, the cost of groceries and rent, which are through the roof. You know, these are the things that are, I think, top of mind for people everywhere I go across the province. Nobody asked for this election, you know, but I do think that our message, which is that you have an opportunity to actually make change in this election, to vote for a hopeful alternative, is breaking through.
I know that your contention, and certainly I heard this in the debate, is that this isn't an election about what Doug Ford is talking about, which is certainly the threat posed by Donald Trump and tariffs. But at the federal level, that has taken up a lot of oxygen. And I wanted to ask your position on a few of those issues, because if you are successful and you do become premier, obviously you will have a lot of impact on whatever the country decides to do going forward. And I wanted to start off on the idea of moving away from relying on the United States as our sole trading partner when it comes to a lot of what we do export. In particular, one conversation has revolved around oil. 95% of the oil we send out of this country goes to the United States. As leader of the NDP, would you support a pipeline, an oil pipeline that went west to east through Ontario?
Look, you know, Vasi, I'll tell you what I've been saying about the threat of Donald Trump and the tariffs threat throughout this election. And it is a concern. Absolutely. I think it's an existential threat to who we are in Ontario and to Canada and to our economy. And I think it was extremely problematic that Doug Ford decided to call an election and resign as premier in the middle of this. So, you know, I've always called, and I will continue to, for a strong and united Canada-wide approach. And I think that a big part of that is, to some extent, we will always have a relationship, a trade relationship with the United States. But we also have to, and I think Ontarians and Canadians are turning our minds to this, we have to become more self-reliant. We have to build up our Ontario industry and Ontario jobs. We have to make sure that our citizens are not vulnerable when a threat like this comes up. And, you know, I'll tell you, in Ontario right now, people are vulnerable. We are not in a good place, right? We already have people who are lined up at food banks. We already have people who are hurting. Multiple jobs lined up at food banks, unable to pay their rent. That's the reality after 7 years of Doug Ford. And the last time that Doug Ford came up against the threat of tariffs, and in fact, when tariffs were imposed in 2018 by Donald Trump, he went into hiding. Right? We lost jobs here in Ontario, and he didn't help us out at all. So I'm going to be the premier who fights for every single job in every single sector in Ontario.
And I do appreciate that information, but with respect, that didn't answer the question. The question was whether, as premier of a province that this pipeline, supposedly, if it were to be built, would have to go through. Would you be, you know, in lockstep with your federal counterpart, Jagmeet Singh, who is so far refusing to equivocate a position, or do you have a position on whether or not you would support a pipeline going west to east through Ontario?
I think this is a question, as I said, that it requires a strong, united, Canada-wide approach. You know, we have a number of issues right now, including some of our trade barriers, internal trade barriers in Canada that we have to work on, we have to resolve, but we have to come together to do that as a country. These are conversations that are not helped by individual premiers going off and freelancing down in the United States, as some of ours have. So that's my approach to things, you know, is united, strong. And I will say again, one thing I will not do is leave Ontarians vulnerable like they are right now to the threats of Donald Trump.
I think that the point of people who are now coming back and saying this is something that should be reconsidered is exactly that level of reliance, right? And trying to avoid the vulnerability that we face right now. I don't understand, like your answer did not provide a position. Do you just not have a position on a pipeline right now going through Ontario? You
know, I'm going to tell you, Vasi, what I'm hearing from Ontarians right now is they can't find a family doctor. You know, they can't afford a home. We have the lowest housing starts that we've had in this province since the 1950s. People are worried that our kids are going to school with empty bellies. So my priorities 100% right now are going to be about making sure that we bring in things like a universal food program in our schools so that kids have full bellies, that we bring in a grocery rebate to help people put food on the table and keep some money in their pockets, a monthly rebate, to hire doctors. This is where Ontarians are at right now. And I will absolutely support industry, and I will support industry all across Canada, but I will do it with a strong, united Canada First approach, working with my partners in the other provinces and at the federal level.
All that you listed, and I think I completely understand, Ontarians will hear those problems and want them addressed too. They all require substantial funding though, right? And part of what generates revenue is corporate taxes, is is not being in a recession vis-a-vis Donald Trump. So when you say you want a united Canada, again, the issue with your federal counterpart, Jagmeet Singh, has been trying to get an answer from him one way or the other, and that's opened up the NDP to being accused of being anti-resources, a conduit for our resources getting somewhere other than the United States. You don't have a position.
Look, as I've said, we should be. And I mean, look, Doug Ford has always said that he 100% supports Donald Trump. He said it again. He thought his mic was off, but it wasn't, right? People here in Ontario, we know who Doug Ford is. We know who he supports. He's always told us who he is. He's 100% behind Donald Trump. And for us here in Ontario, our focus right now is in trying to make sure that our people are strong, that our people are taken care of. That will be my priority as Premier, 100%. I won't be supporting Donald Trump, but I will be working with my colleagues across the country to make sure that everybody here in Ontario is strong and taken care of. And I got to say, Vassie, as a New Democrat, I have always stood with our friends in the labor movement. I've worked really hard in my time in this province to support workers in Northern Ontario and lots of industries, mining, forestry, etc. So I believe in those industries. But again, these are conversations that we have to have as a country. And the most important thing for us right now in Ontario is making sure that people know that there is hope in their vote, that their vote has power, and that there's an opportunity here for a different vision for Ontario. Life doesn't have to keep going like this. I think a lot of people, after years of Liberal and Conservative governments in Ontario, think that this is the way it has to be, that they have to settle for this, and they just don't.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note. Ms. Stiles, I appreciate you making the time. Best of luck on the campaign trail. Thank you.
Thank you.